leaders from Central Kentucky joining us for today's event with Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. At this time, I'd like to thank the businesses who sponsor the Public Policy Over Lunch series. The event sponsors were displayed on your screen as you entered the Zoom chat. Support sponsors enable Commerce Lexington to continue to host these opportunities, and we appreciate the recognition and we value their membership. I'd like to recognize Nick Rowe, President of Kentucky American Water and Board Chair of the Kentucky Chamber, for presenting and sponsoring this event.
Thanks, Ray. On behalf of Kentucky American Water, I want to welcome you all to this event and extend a special welcome to John Cameron for giving us a little bit of his valuable time this afternoon. You know, we at Kentucky American are pleased to continue to sponsor these events. We've been doing so for a number of years, and thanks to the other sponsors. I'm grateful to Commerce Lexington to find a way to keep these sessions going despite these challenging times that we're in. You know, perhaps now more than ever, I think with all the issues going on around the city, state, and nation, I think it's very important for us to stay engaged and continue dialogue with our elected officials to develop effective solutions that not only help us manage through these difficult times, but also help create opportunities so we can have solutions for brighter days ahead. You know, we at Kentucky American are the water provider for this region in 14 counties and part of the American Water family in 46 states that serve about 15 million people. And being essential water service has been critical, not only in Lexington, Central Kentucky, but throughout the nation to provide quality water service and continue to invest in our infrastructure needs during these pandemic times, because people really need critical water service provider during this time. So, you know, we've waived late fees nationally, and we've suspended non-payment shutoffs, and just trying to do everything we can to support our communities. I just think as a business, for all those business leaders on the phone and those who are members of Commerce Lexington or state chamber, you know, we have to continue to support these nonprofit agencies during these challenging times. And at the same time, take a step back personally, what we've asked our employees to do, that we are engaged in, you know, a time in America and a commonwealth that we've never seen, with racial unrest, with economic challenges, with so many people unemployed, and then top that with COVID-19. And we've asked our employees, we'll do our part as an organization, as many businesses in Central Kentucky and the Commonwealth will do. But we also ask, what are you doing personally? You know, if you make a run to the grocery store, take time to maybe purchase groceries for someone in need. And if we're are out ordering dinner or whatever, try to tip heavily. Everything we can do to help those that are not as blessed as we are. So with that said, you know, we have responsibility as an organization, as a business community, to help our communities survive and help our fellow brethren, but at the same time, you know, try to do the right thing. So with that said, Ray, you know, again, I'll turn it back to Joan Cameron, and thanks for, again, Joan, for your time today. Thank you again for speaking to our state chamber earlier in the year when you first took office. And we really look forward to hearing updates from you today, General, as we go forward. So Ray, back to you, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Nick. I want to thank you personally for your leadership in 2020 as the board chair for the Kentucky Chamber. And I want to thank your leadership of your company as Kentucky American Water continues to lead in Central Kentucky. We thank you for that.
Thank you, Ray.
As Nick mentioned, we continue to operate in very unique and uncertain times. And now more than ever, it's critical for the business community to keep lines of communication open for local, state, and federal leaders involved in shaping public policies and guiding our economic recovery. We are grateful to have Attorney General Daniel Cameron with us to help educate the business community with the role of his office and his work to help protect the Commonwealth in a variety of areas. Daniel Cameron is the 51st Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the first African-American independently elected to statewide office in Kentucky. Some of the areas of focus include fighting the drug epidemic, partnering with law enforcement, and securing justice for crime victims. As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the Commonwealth, he works to improve public safety outcomes for the men, women, and children of all 120 counties of Kentucky. Attorney General Cameron, on behalf of the Central Kentucky business community, we send our well wishes, first of all, in your marriage earlier this month, and we appreciate the opportunity to interact with you today. After you finish remarks, sir, I have a few questions for you that were submitted by some of our members. Please proceed with your update. Thank you, General.
Well, thank you, Ray, and I also want to extend my appreciation to Mr. Rowe, Nick as well, for his powerful remarks, and I appreciate both of you all in the leadership capacity that you've provided in what's otherwise been a challenging and in many ways tumultuous year. So thank you, Ray, again for that kind introduction and your leadership of Commerce Lexington. And also want to extend appreciation to Bob Quick as well for this invitation to talk about my role as Attorney General and the priorities of this office. I know we're doing this virtually, but I do still consider it an honor to gather with men and women from the greater Lexington community who are invested in the health and growth of Lexington's economy and workforce. As one of the top economic development organizations in the nation, Commerce Lexington's commitment to creating jobs and growing businesses has and continues to strengthen Lexington and its surrounding communities. While businesses across the Commonwealth are weathering unexpected difficulties due to COVID-19, I am thankful for your advocacy and your continued efforts on behalf of Central Kentucky. When I was sworn into office 8 months ago, no one could have predicted how our communities and our economy would be impacted by COVID-19. This global health crisis has changed nearly every aspect of our lives. In turn, it has become a primary focus for our office. We now spend a significant amount of time helping Kentuckians navigate new challenges created by this pandemic. As part of this office's response to the virus, I've deployed the resources of our Consumer Protection Division to safeguard Kentuckians from the destructive effects of fraud and scams. While anyone can fall victim to a scam, during COVID-19, we have witnessed an alarming increase of up to 300% in scams targeting Kentuckians. And dollar losses from scams reported to our office have increased by over 2,000% since the state of emergency began. And seniors are often the most vulnerable to scams. During the month of July, approximately 89.5% of all financial losses reported to our office were due to scams perpetrated against Kentuckians 60 years of age or older. So to combat these scammers, our offices of Consumer Protection and Senior Protection have issued alerts to warn consumers of the dangers of scams and to offer tips to avoid becoming a victim of fraud. We have cautioned consumers regarding numerous COVID-19 related scams. Scams that we have seen have involved stimulus checks, promises of cures, testing, fake charities, researchers, and Medicaid fraud. Most recently, our office partnered with someone that you all are all familiar with, U.S. Attorney Rob Duncan, to warn Kentuckians about a potential brushing scam related to unsolicited packages of personal protective equipment from foreign countries. Companies who employ the scam send inexpensive items to the homes of U.S. residents and then write a 5-star review of their product using the resident's name and address. While this incident may seem harmless to the recipient initially, being targeted by this scam may indicate that an individual's personal information or identity has been compromised. This type of scam can also hurt legitimate businesses who receive reviews from hard-earned sales to customers. So our Office of Consumer Protection and Senior Protection offices also work together to protect Kentuckians from individuals or businesses who engage in misleading and deceptive business practices. Not only do these bad actors harm consumers, but they can divert customers from honest companies and hamper economic growth. Our Office in Consumer Protection works hard to investigate those who illegally profit from hardworking Kentuckians. Earlier this summer, our investigation by our office led to a grand jury indictment of the co-owners of a home repair business. These individuals were defrauding customers by taking payments for home repairs or improvements that simply were not completed. Kentucky's consumers deserve to be protected from deceitful business practices, and we are working hard to ensure that bad actors do not have a place in Kentucky's marketplace. We are also committed to safeguarding our seniors from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Our Office of Medicaid Fraud and Abuse Control investigates and prosecutes those who abuse our seniors and steal taxpayer dollars by defrauding Kentucky's Medicaid program. While many medical providers operate ethically, there are those that seek to defraud our Medicaid program. So our office vigorously investigates referrals regarding abuse in the Medicaid program and will seek restitution if there are financial losses. I'm pleased to report that just a couple of weeks ago, our office recovered nearly $1 million for the Kentucky Medicaid program as a result of a settlement with one of the nation's largest providers of hospital and healthcare services for inpatient and residential psychiatric and behavioral health. If left unchecked, abuses in the Medicaid program can harm beneficiaries and cost taxpayers millions of dollars each year. During this pandemic, we've also been vigilant against price gouging. Kentucky's price gouging laws were put into effect in conjunction with the state of emergency and protect Kentuckians from paying a price for necessary goods that is in gross excess of the price before the state of emergency. The price gouging laws also protect Kentucky businesses who operate in good faith from being taken advantage of by some third-party sellers who purchase goods at a fair price and then try to resell them at an increased rate. We unfortunately saw this kind of situation unfold early in the pandemic when two Tennessee brothers traveled along the I-75 corridor to purchase medical supplies from local stores and then resell them at a much higher rate. Our office partnered with Tennessee Attorney General Herb Slattery to recover from these two brothers large quantities of hand sanitizer, medical masks, gloves, and disinfectant wipes, and return them to the Kentucky and Tennessee communities where they had been purchased. Look, we recognize that businesses face an incredible economic challenge as a result of this pandemic, and I'm committed to protecting Kentucky businesses from further hardships by advocating for liability protections contained in the Federal Safe to Work Act. Earlier this month, I joined 22 state attorneys general to co-sign a letter urging Congress to pass this important measure. The Safe to Work Act ensures liability protection for much needed goods and services while still ensuring that victims have legal options when appropriate. In the wake of the pandemic, the extension of appropriate civil liability protections is needed for businesses, manufacturers, healthcare workers, and healthcare facilities, just to list a few. It's essential that we stabilize the legal environment so that businesses in Central Kentucky and throughout the Commonwealth can reopen and rehire employees without the threat of frivolous lawsuits. I'm also committed to protecting businesses and consumers from the restricted competition, rising prices, and limited choices associated with price fixing. May of this year, as many of you all know, I joined with Ag Commissioner Ryan Quarles in authoring a letter to United States Attorney General William Barr asking the Department of Justice to investigate alleged price fixing in the cattle industry. Since the start of the pandemic, Kentucky's 38,000 cattle producers have seen a 30 and 40% drop, while the price of beef products in grocery stores has increased. Because of our requests and others, the Justice Department has launched an investigation concerning these allegations and has issued subpoenas to the 4 largest meat packers in the country. Along with looking out for Kentucky consumers and businesses during this pandemic, we are still delivering on our promise to improve public safety outcomes in every Kentucky community. Safe, strong communities undoubtedly contribute to opportunity and economic growth, and we will continue to partner with law enforcement and community stakeholders to create safer communities. This work must include addressing child abuse and neglect across our state. I'm sure you've all seen the troubling reports showing that as the pandemic continues, we're seeing a noticeable decline in reports of child abuse and neglect that coincides with the timing of closures related to COVID-19. Kentucky sadly ranks first in the nation in incidences of child abuse and neglect, but we are committed to ending this injustice. Our Office of Trafficking and Abuse Prevention and Prosecution assists local law enforcement in the prevention and prosecution of child abuse and human trafficking cases. The office also provides financial support to community partners. Just last week, the Child Victims Trust Fund awarded nearly $220,000 in grants to organizations specializing in child abuse prevention. In fact, $26,000 went to Lexington-owned Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky. We are profoundly grateful for the contribution these organizations make to protect Kentucky's children from abuse and neglect, and we are proud to be their committed partner. We also seek to remove the scourge of human trafficking from the Commonwealth, which often involves the trafficking of individuals for labor. As business leaders, I know that you understand that human lives are not a commodity that can be bought and sold, and we are committed, just like you are, to ending this injustice. To further our work this summer, our office was awarded $100,000 in grant funding from the Department of Justice to develop a two-pronged human trafficking awareness and training campaign. The campaign will include training for law enforcement, businesses, and community leaders regarding the identification and handling of human trafficking situations, and a multi-platform communications campaign to raise awareness about human trafficking. This grant goes hand in hand with our work with the General Assembly to pass House Bill 2 earlier this year, which increases awareness of human trafficking and makes it easier for law enforcement to arrest and prosecute traffickers. This legislation is now in effect and calls upon airports, truck stops, bus stations, and train stations to publicly post the human trafficking hotline. Child abuse and human trafficking have plagued our communities for far too long. We are fighting every day to ensure that victims are given a voice, and that those who chose to engage in this evil are prosecuted. Part of the task of building safer communities also includes fighting back against what, as many of you all know, I've often referred to as the public safety challenge of our lifetime, and that is the drug epidemic. Just last week, the Office of Drug Control Policy here in Kentucky released the 2019 overdose report, which showed a 5% increase in overdose deaths from 2018. In all, we lost 1,316 individuals to lethal overdoses last year. There isn't a community or a county in the Commonwealth that has not been impacted by the drug epidemic. I know that many of you have seen firsthand the devastating effect of the drug epidemic in your schools, your businesses, and across central Kentucky. I'm firmly committed to partnering with anyone who wants to lend their hand in combating an epidemic that has devastated the health and safety of our citizens. We are committed to investigating and prosecuting those who would seek to destroy the lives of individuals and families by bringing drugs across our borders. Our office will act on behalf of our counties as the tip of the spear to confront drug trafficking in Kentucky. We cannot afford any longer to allow silos to hinder our efforts to tackle these important issues. We will do all we can to ensure that our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners are not prevented from working together. The future of our children and our communities depend upon our ability to collaborate effectively. And I stand willing and ready to be a convening authority so that every idea, resource, and partnership is brought to bear in this fight. Over the last several months, there's no doubt that we faced unprecedented challenges related to COVID-19. While we do not yet know what the remaining months of 2020 and the upcoming year will hold, I can promise you that regardless of the circumstances, my office remains committed to our responsibility to protect consumers and partner with businesses to support the revitalization of our economy. We continue to serve Kentuckians by tackling the public safety issues in the communities where we live, own our businesses, and raise our families. I look forward to continuing this important work with each of you, and I'm confident that we can emerge from this pandemic stronger than before. I so value the relationships that we've developed with Commerce Lexington since beginning in this office. I continue to be grateful for all that you all do in providing economic support to Central Kentucky. And I appreciate the partnership and strong efforts on your part to confront COVID-19, to be a good neighbor, and to be a good Kentucky corporate citizen. So thank you so much to all those that are watching. And I'm happy to take any questions that Ray might have.
All right. Thank you, General Cameron. We appreciate all of your remarks in regard to protecting Kentuckians on a daily basis. The individual protections, the consumer protections, the business protections, and especially protecting the children of the Commonwealth really hits home for our membership. So we thank you for that. We do have a few questions that have kind of come from our membership, and these are some of the questions that we've kind of aggregated that were in common. So I will jump right into it. COVID-19 emergency has provided a lot of authority to governors across the nation. For those of us who are not attorneys and don't have a working knowledge of constitutional law, can you provide a brief synopsis of the legal authority of the Commonwealth's governor related to the issuance of an executive order, and what exactly constitutes a state of emergency?
Well, let me say, so KRS Chapter 39A spells out the governor's powers when there is an emergency. 39A was actually passed by the General Assembly in 1998, and as it was originally contemplated, it was contemplated to handle natural disasters. So what comes to mind is a tornado or God forbid, some other event or of terrorism or something of that caliber. It wasn't necessarily contemplated that when the General Assembly passed this, that it would be dealing with a global pandemic, something that is much more protracted in the scope of how long it could potentially last. And so the question that governors and attorneys general across the country are having to deal with in general assemblies, to the extent that they are not part-time legislatures. Here in Kentucky, we do have a part-time General Assembly. But to the extent that this issue has arisen because of COVID-19, the question before many of us is, what are the scope of the governor's powers in the midst of a pandemic? What do those emergency executive orders look like? And are there any defining limits to those orders? And so over the course of this pandemic, we have tried to be mindful in the Attorney General's office of the great responsibility that the president has on the federal level, that our governor has in keeping people safe here in the Commonwealth, and quite frankly, the responsibility that as business leaders and as individuals, we have to keep each other safe as well. But what we've also tried to do, and this reflects a remark that Bill Barr, who I mentioned earlier is the United States Attorney General for the United States, said, was that even in the midst of a pandemic, the Constitution is not suspended. And so our responsibility in the Attorney General's office has been to make sure that we keep people safe, but also balance that against the constitutional rights of our citizens and our businesses here in the Commonwealth. And we've tried to do that in a responsible manner as it relates to some of the issues that have been presented in litigation. You all know that here soon, we will be before the state Supreme Court having a conversation about what the limits are, if any, to the governor's executive power. A lot of the concerns that we have heard in the AG's office and perhaps are reflected in conversations that you all have had amongst your membership is that often when some of these orders are put forth, they really come to a surprise to individuals, whether you're in the daycare business or if you have a restaurant or a bar, or if you're a factory and have an assembly line. Some of these orders that have been put forth have come as a surprise to people. And so there's a question about a business or an individual's due process rights and whether the General Assembly can delegate some of their authority to the governor as it relates to issuing these orders. And so those will all be conversations that we have with the Supreme Court here in the near term. I'm hopeful that at the end of that conversation, there will be clarification on what are the scope of the governor authority. And I also think that there will be great interest from the General Assembly once they return to their legislative session at the beginning of next year in looking at what are the bounds, the outward bounds of a governor's authority. And so it is a great discussion that's being had all across the country. Again, we have tried to do it in a responsible manner. So if you look at our most recent challenges, whether it be in Boone County or in Scott County, those have come based on reasoned legal conversations that we've had internally and in consultation with just hearing from everyday Kentuckians about the unintended consequences. I recognize that when a governor makes a decision, when Governor Beshear makes the decisions that he makes, there's no ill intent. I know he makes them because he wants to keep people safe here in the Commonwealth. But again, there's an equal responsibility to make sure that we are abiding by our state constitution and our statutory framework here in Kentucky. And we're trying to make sure that that is upheld as we have these conversations in state court and at the state Supreme Court.
No, we appreciate that. We are definitely following this due process rights. And I agree with you as a business owner and as business owners and executives on this call, we have to always figure out what the intended and unintended consequences are and more or less understand the best practices that have come out of this situation. So if, God forbid, we're ever in this situation again, we can react accordingly. So we'll follow that closely. Another question to follow up on the safe to work. Specific question, Attorney General. What role in protecting businesses and what kind of clarity can you provide on the liability front for businesses, especially smaller, independent, small entrepreneurial businesses?
Well, from the beginning of this pandemic, I've been just exceedingly proud of the way that Kentuckians have stepped up and heeded the call of the president and our United States Congress, and then Governor Beshear and all of our county judge executives and mayors to just be good neighbors. And so I've been exceedingly proud of the way that the Commonwealth has responded in that regard. And in particular, businesses who in many ways have halted their normal efforts and their normal course of conduct to make hand sanitizer, to respond to the needs of our medical and healthcare professionals, to provide PPE. It has been really encouraging to see that the way that Kentuckians and businesses have responded. And as a result of that response, it is my hope that businesses and individuals who have taken it up of their own accord to help combat this pandemic are given some grace as it relates to what occurs after this pandemic subsides, and we're looking at the landscape, particularly the legal landscape. And so I would like to see, and which is why myself and 22 other attorneys general wrote a letter making sure that there's clarification and reform on the federal level on liability here, not only in Kentucky, but across the nation. Again, we recognize that if there are legitimate grievances, an individual needs to be able to go into court to make their case for that legitimate grievance or injury. But there also needs to be considerations made for our great businesses and individuals who, again, have stepped up to the plate to combat this pandemic, have changed the way they operate in order to respond to this moment. So we don't want frivolous lawsuits to get in the way of businesses trying to do right by the citizens of all of our respective states, in particular here in Kentucky. So I'm hopeful that we'll see in the Safe to Work Act that Kentucky businesses don't face additional hardship due to frivolous lawsuits. That's my hope. What happens in Congress is a little bit above my pay grade. So I will leave it to them to make the ultimate judgments about what that looks like. But I am hopeful that we will see some liability reform that takes into account the great work that businesses and individuals here in Kentucky have undertaken to respond to this pandemic.
Okay, just a few more questions, sir. One thing that has popped up here recently, and it's on the mind of most businesses if they're not paying attention. You had mentioned unintended consequences. For years, the unemployment insurance process in the state of Kentucky operated at a fairly high level. Obviously, that was all pre-COVID. Post-COVID, we had a lot of issues. And we understand there's been a lot of discussion and stuff moving through the legal system in the state in regards to representation, which would be very impactful to the business community if they indeed had to supply or have lawyers in regards to every individual unemployment insurance issue by individuals. So how proactive can you be when you see something like this that's kind of on the horizon that can really impact, as you said earlier, the business protections, so to speak, to make sure that we have a level playing field?
Well, I was just briefed on this issue yesterday, and I think it's incredibly important, in my judgment, that the way that a particular agency has allowed for and folks within an administration to come in and provide insights into that business. I'm of the judgment that we should continue allowing that. In an agency proceeding, it's not necessary that you have a lawyer. It is not a judicial proceeding per se. And so I'm of the mindset that we continue to allow for the existing pattern and practice as it relates to allowing business representatives as opposed to lawyers be able to come in and make that case in the agency context.
Okay, thank you for that. A couple of more questions that are kind of pertinent to what we have going on today. As your role as Attorney General in ensuring the public's confidence in our election process, what is your role exactly in ensuring the confidence in our election process for the upcoming election?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I want to make people aware of is that we keep an ongoing election fraud hotline that you could call today. You could have called January 1 of this year to make sure or to alert our office to any concerns that you have about election fraud, or if you just have a simple question about polling locations or how many exist, we're able to filter that information and then get you in the right place as it relates to any information that you need. Or we have investigators in-house through our Department of Investigations that allow for us to conduct due diligence as it relates to any report. So that's an existing responsibility that we have all year long. Another thing that we also have done recently and this started back in the primary, is we joined up with Secretary of State Mike Adams to create a ballot integrity task force. That really allows, I talked a little bit in my remarks about silos in the law enforcement context, meaning you might have sheriffs in one silo, you might have prosecutors in another silo, and police chiefs, and all these relative or respective agencies within the law enforcement landscape not really communicating with one another. And we've done our part in making sure that we tear those silos down so that we're all communicating. And as I mentioned, Rob Duncan, who's a dear friend and is the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District, he's helped in that process. And there have been so many great, whether it be Chief Weathers or others, who have done a fantastic job of just building those relationships to share intelligence. I use that as an example because that's exactly what we've done as it relates to the Ballot Integrity Task Force. It allows stakeholders from the law enforcement community, from the election community, to come together to be able to share information that could be helpful in making sure that there is integrity within our elections process. And so we've got somebody that serves from the FBI, Kentucky Homeland Security, from my office, from all the respective agencies that can be helpful, again, in making sure that we limit any potential for fraud in the upcoming election. That's how we conducted it in the primary, and that's what we've done and are doing as it relates to this election. And so we've got that, and we also, by statute, have a responsibility to audit, and this is based on a random drawing, 5% of Kentucky counties as it relates to the election, the November election. So we will undertake audits randomly drawn of 6 counties after the election. And so there are a whole host of responsibilities that this office has in addition to the election fraud hotline. And so we play a pretty large role in making sure that there is integrity within our elections and that people can have confidence in the results of the election.
Okay. Sir, can you speak to, was there any evidence of any voter fraud in this most recent primary election that we had?
Well, what I will say is that, we continue to undertake investigations, and I won't get into any specifics, but you can have confidence in the results that we saw in the primary. But just as part of our responsibility, we take every allegation that we receive, no matter how small or how large, and we do a thorough investigation of it. But there's nothing specific to the primary that is should be of concern to anyone that is listening or watching now. And again, I feel confident that we will have a strong election in November, and that people can be confident also in the integrity of that election and the results.
Okay, thank you for that answer, sir. Last group of questions here. The Breonna Taylor investigation has garnered a lot of state and national attention. I read this morning that the black militia that was in Louisville in July is discussing returning on Derby Day, matter of fact. Can you talk about your role in this investigation and how your office interacts with local law enforcement? And what are some of the key elements that you can discuss of the process, and when we can expect some sort of resolution in the investigation?
Well, I will say that initially, and as most of you all know that are watching and listening, know that most of investigations into potential criminal matters are handled on the local level, meaning either a county attorney, depending on what the charge is or what the matter is, or a Commonwealth's attorney really have a responsibility in conjunction with local law enforcement to handle specific investigations and any ultimate charges or prosecutions of cases. In Kentucky, we have a prosecutorial system that primarily things are handled at the level of the 120 counties. In this particular case, the Commonwealth attorney in Jefferson County, Tom Wine, did not think it was appropriate for him to investigate the death and the passing of Miss Breonna Taylor because he was simultaneously working on a separate prosecution that could impact that investigation. And so he called our office, alerted our office to that conflict, And at that point, based on the statutory framework here in Kentucky, we have the ability to provide a special prosecutor to the local jurisdiction, in this regard, Jefferson County. Or we can take the matter as the special prosecutor. And so I looked at the case, realizing even at that moment that there were sensitivities surrounding the case, and made the decision that rather than send it to another county prosecutor, another Commonwealth's attorney, or another prosecutorial in one of our 120 counties here, I chose to take the case because, quite frankly, we have the resources to bear to do an independent investigation of this case. So what I mean is, in the AG's office, we have what's called the Department of Criminal Investigations. I mentioned it briefly earlier. The Department of Criminal Investigation has a team of career investigators that have extensive practice and extensive experience in investigations ranging from drug crimes to cyber crimes to trafficking crimes. A lot of these folks have long experiences with murder cases and death cases. And so it was incumbent in my judgment that we take this case because we had that within the office that we could rely on to undertake an independent investigation. We also have in our special prosecutions unit a team of prosecutors that have a long career and long years of experience as prosecutors. And so again, it was in my judgment the responsible thing to do for our office to take it so that we can conduct an independent investigation, irrespective of what came to us from Louisville Metro. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been undertaking that independent investigation. The other important point to stress here is that because of the relationships that this office has developed amongst our law enforcement entities, we now are able to have a joint investigation or conduct this investigation in conjunction with the FBI. And so we have been conducting the investigation, been relying in part on the FBI on a few particular matters. The FBI in their testing capacity has the ability to look at things that, quite frankly, we don't have the capability to test or conduct here in Kentucky. And so they've got a ballistics testing at Quantico that allows them to, again, see things that we just can't see with some of the devices that we have here in Kentucky. And so we are waiting on the ballistics information and data report from the FBI. That'll be an important part of the analysis that we're undertaking. We're also continuing to undertake witness investigations. Although you would think that those are easy to conduct, there is a lot of logistics involved in finding these people and having them sit down for what could be 1 or 2 hours. And so those are two of the main parts that we're still needing to finalize our investigation and make assessments. But keep in mind that I took this case because I recognize the sensitivity surrounding it and how incredibly important it is that we get it right, that the facts lead us to the truth. And we, I assure you, are leaving no stone unturned as it relates to this investigation. And so I just want to make that abundantly clear to those that are watching. We have been working, again, I've got a very, very good and big team that is working on this case. And we will get to the truth and we will report it and make everyone aware as soon as we've finalized our investigation.
Okay. Thank you for that answer, sir. Final question is, do you think there are reforms needed in policing procedures in Kentucky?
Well, in the midst of working on this ongoing investigation, I won't say anything specific, but I am aware, certainly Miss Attica Scott, Representative Scott, yesterday just put forth or at least she had a press conference unveiling an effort that she's going to undertake as it relates to no-knock warrants. And then a few weeks ago, President Stivers pre-filed a bill along the same lines. And so there seems to be a lot of interest here in the Capitol that when legislators return in January, that no-knock warrants and other matters related to body cameras will be of great debate and conversation. And I look forward to being a productive part of that conversation. But in the midst of this investigation, it would be inappropriate probably for me to discuss specifics as it relates to those pieces of legislation. But I certainly hope that when we have concluded this investigation, that we will be a productive member of those conversations.
Okay, thank you, sir. Well, I want to thank you, and Commerce Lexington wants to thank you, Attorney Cameron, for your time and insights. We appreciate your interaction today. I'd like again to thank Nick Rowe and Kentucky American Water and the other event sponsors for the support, and all the attendees for paying attention, taking good notes, and hopefully applying all of the things that General Cameron has spoken of today. And always remember, if Commerce Lexington can be any assistance to anybody on this line and any of your businesses, please do not hesitate to reach out to us and reach out to our team. And stay tuned for more information about future policy over lunch events. Once again, thank you, Attorney General Cameron, for your time. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your comments. And we'll continue to stay tuned and pay attention. And, you know, the whole world's watching when it comes to the Breonna Taylor case. We understand that. And it's close to us, so we'll stay tuned on that. We thank you for your time again, sir. Thank you. Have a good day.
Well, yes, sir. Thank you, and thank you to all those that are watching. Again, I just appreciate what you all are doing in the midst of this pandemic to be a good neighbor and to help combat it. And so I'm grateful, and I assure you that your efforts do not go unnoticed. And I hope that we can continue to have strong relationships moving forward. And Ray, thank you again. I'm grateful for your service as chair, and look forward when we can all get together in person again in the future.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a good day, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.